So hello and welcome everyone. This is one of those smashing hours where essentially we just gather together in a very informal conversation meeting to talk about things without even having a plan. Sarah, do we have a plan for today? Oh, I think that Sarah is, yeah, Sarah is back.
I'm back.
So we usually, it's not like we are setting up, oh, this is a schedule for the day. We're going to talk about this and then we're going to talk about that. It's very much just a random conversation that you would have normally if you just give somebody a call or just chatting with someone, right? And that's a really important part of it. And we want it to be interactive, right? So it's not about what we think is important to cover or mention. It's not quite like that. It's about maybe things that you find important, things that you are struggling with at the time right now. Maybe you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, topics that you'd like to bring up. This is kind of your opportunity to do so. I do have some fallback topics just in case, but your topics are way more important than anything that I'm going to bring up. And today I'm very, very happy to have Sara with us. And Sara is the accessibility, how would I call it? Guru? Can I say guru? I don't know. It seems like guru, I always think about no.
Just an accessibility advocate.
Advocate, okay, accessibility advocate, knowing a lot about accessibility, working in this space for a very long time, but also spending a lot of time just in general on the front-end side of things, CSS, HTML, accessibility, semantics, and all of the SVG, of course, as well. So if you have any questions about that, you'll probably be in a good place by asking Sara anything. Sara, are there any topics that you do not accept, like NFTs? Would they fit in your field of expertise?
No.
Okay, so we should not ask. I like, is there like an angle there? Can I ask you about the accessibility of NFTs?
No.
Okay, that's a very.
I mean, you can ask anything you want, but I won't have the answers.
Okay, but don't you always have answers for everything?
No, you'd think so, but no.
Okay, well, all right. Well, maybe with this in mind, we will not be talking about NFTs today, but hey, come just on the call and let us know what you would like us to focus on. You can turn on your camera, you can turn on your microphone and just speak directly. And if you do not, then I'll just bring up some questions on my own first.
I have something that I want to raise.
Sure, go Talia, please.
It's a control that I see every now and then. They're using ARIA, of course. HTML is not enough. I'm talking about a multi-select combo box. So it's a combo box. Combo box opens, I would say, a list box, but a list box is multi-select with checkboxes. When you select the values, it accumulates what you selected as like chips at the top. Chips has to be accessible list, so you can go through the list and remove values that you don't want from the list. You could have list of 200 items, so it's more complex than that. And so I more or less know how to do it, but it doesn't always work for the developers. It depends on the framework they're working on, if it's Angular or React or something else even older than that. So just wanted to know your take about this.
Okay, I'm going to first unmute myself by default, just so that I don't have to keep unmuting. Okay, so as far as this component goes, I've recently used it in the new ESLint website redesign. I don't use my own code here. I try not to reinvent the wheel. A couple of my accessibility friends, they are amazing people. There's Scott O'Hara and I think it was Sarah Higley. She created 3 versions of the select dropdown that are completely customizable, stylable, and they are I'm not going to say 100% accessible because there's always like things change, technology changes, support changes, their bugs may appear, but I always use her code. She has an article, a 2-part article that goes into the detail about all of it, technology, assistive technology support, all the code that went into making them, and then the live demo, and then the code that you can use. I don't usually use React or any JavaScript framework in my work, so I cannot, like, I wouldn't know the answer to those specifically, but I mean, every single framework JavaScript developer that I've worked with before has been able to take my vanilla JavaScript code and turn it into some version of React or Vue. I can give you a link to her articles and the demo if you're not familiar with them.
Yeah.
Would that help?
Also, feel free to share the
Love
screen
that.
if you want
I mean,
to
I
at
know
any
both
point.
of them, but I'd love to have a link. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Alright.
Let me find
Can I
them.
comment on this for a second?
Yes.
Hello. So I also see I'm working with Vitaly on these issues. My name is Adi. I'm a blind assistive technology user and developer and accessibility consultant from Israel. I also work with Vitaly on many of these issues. The problem is, in most cases, that developers don't like to, there are certain limitations that you have to accept for this to work properly with the screen readers. For example, having a separate place, a separate list that shows like the items that you're selected and the area to select and unselect is another part of the control. And like developers don't really want to accept that. This is the biggest problem I see, because again, they want to look, cool and have some wise, great designs that sometimes cause limitations. This is what we've asked this question primarily, because whatever we suggest, usually, they can do it, but you need to make it in a way which makes sense to the user. So I'll be also interested, of course, in looking at what you've mentioned. I think we know these, but I'll be happy to look at them also. Okay,
I almost got the link. My not issue, but most of the conversations are I don't want to say problems, because I've been really lucky because I've been working with amazing people ever since I started freelancing. So none of them, I've never had any problems with any of them. But usually the discussion around this, removing the selected items and putting them outside of the select dropdown, that's usually an issue that I have with designers, not developers. I'm the developer, I do the implementation. And I'm always like, it's, it causes a usability and an accessibility issue to place them inside. So we have to put them outside. Thankfully, usually 99.99% of my clients, they do care about accessibility, and they hire me because they trust my recommendations. So I haven't had to fight for changing the design. But yes, it's usually a designer not accepting. Yeah. Okay, I got a link. I'm just going to paste it in the chat.
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. There's also a question that Christine had, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I have a not so technical question, but basically it's an accessibility question, a front end one, that we recently came in with our team with a website redesign. And the designers had, and I can find nothing in WCAG, I can find nothing about this issue specifically, other than a general statement about consistency is important for accessibility. But the designers set in motion this ability to have the ability to change the link colors, even within, not only on a website in general, but on the same page. And I found this a bit weird to have the possibility to have rainbow color links on a page. And how do you tell what's color, what's link? Usually there's a consistency. Somebody gains a familiarity on the website, not even, sighted users, or, but it's just sort of standard practice, but they wanted to change the link colors based on them. Is this an accessibility problem? I mean, I think so, from a consistency standpoint.
Okay, so the first question that I have is, who gets to change the colors? Who has control over the link
author.
Colors? Is it the user?
Every author of any page. And it could be by component. To me, it was like creating chaos and allowing chaos from a design standpoint, but creating accessibility issues. But I just thought I'd double check because yeah, I kind of set in motion a kind of a a flag, a red flag.
I would have definitely flagged this as well, but like you said, there is no mention of that specifically in WCAG. And if we were to get, and this is just a subjective personal opinion here, if we were to get like very technical, and I would be like, or anyone would say, as long as the link colors are accessible and have enough contrast, then there is no technical accessibility issue. But in this case, if I don't usually have a reference such as WCAG to use as leverage in my discussions, the only thing you can do is conduct some usability testing. I mean, most of the accessibility questions you can get the answers to via usability testing. Even auditing and doing our testing as designers and developers is never really enough unless you're dealing with something super simple, like building a very simple website that doesn't have any complex components or customizability. But as soon as it gets to this point where you have a lot of things changing and that can affect usability, only the users can actually give you those answers, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, it's I have also something to maybe add to that as well, because I was just working on a project which was actually kind of funny, because I had to fight for something that is as obvious as it could be. But here was the problem was. The problem was we had the menu bar. In that menu bar, you would have different kind of split buttons where you have an icon on the right, and you have the categories title. The categories title would drive directly to the categories page. And that chevron would actually open that drop down on click, right? And the issue was that people were assuming that when they click on the bar on the title, the accordion would open up, but it wasn't. It was driving people directly to the category. So just to fix that, right, I suggested, well, we could of course just bring in this categories homepage link within the drop down, right? But the other thing we could do is to just make it the category title underlined, so it feels like a link, right? And I had to fight so much because so many people were telling me, well, this is never going to work. We have a very different audience and all that. It's just so obvious to me, right? And we did the test, just a simple usability test, and no problems. It's all just disappeared, because when you have a link, it should probably look like a link, right? It sounds like boring. It doesn't have to look boring, right? But this was just a really thin little underline, and not even like in the original color, and all problems were solved. So sometimes it's really important to make a case. The only thing I could win is just by presenting it as a case and saying, oh, we'll just resolve this, so let's just not have that conversation ever again.
The result of that kind of conversation for me has always led to a change in the design. Like I said, most designers I've worked with have been amazing. So we end up like on the website that I worked with, Jan Persil, he's one of my favorite collaborators so far. We ended up changing the design. So instead of having a link and a separate chevron button for the dropdown, we turned the whole thing into a button. And then the link that takes you to the top level page, we had that inside of the dropdown and called it, I think it was some sort of like overview or something. Yeah. But yeah, I try to recommend against doing this, having a link and a dropdown at the same time. And it's usually also nicer for a progressive enhancement. So you can start with a link that takes you to the top level page. And when the entire thing is open and when the JavaScript runs, it turns those top level links into drop-down buttons.
Yeah. Sure. Actually, maybe just if I may, I do see, I mean, by the way, just for those of you who are just coming in, just came in recently. So if you have any questions that you'd like to bring up, you can either raise your hand here in Zoom or just write in the chat and we'll bring them up. Maybe just as a quick follow-up question that I was asked last week, and I'm just curious about your opinion, everybody else's opinion as well, Sarah. Mega drop-downs opening on hover. Is it still a thing in 2022? Is it okay to have a click, tap, click menu in mobile and then a hover on desktop?
I hate them. I hate them because you have to, I mean, as if the experience is consistent for all users. Like if it opens on hover, does it also open on focus if you're using a keyboard? And if it automatically opens on focus, what is the accessibility like for a screen reader user? So if the screen, because if you have things that are opening, you're probably going to be using the ARIA expanded attribute, right? So you're going to be conveying state. If it's going to open as soon as they focus on it, then the ARIA expanded is always going to be true. Then what is it exactly that so there's a lot of usability issues that you can spot if you, as long as you keep all users in mind, you can easily make a case against this because you.
Yeah, I think that Bas was just agreeing with you.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Don't worry.
No worries,
I think Tade has a follow-up question on that or note.
Yeah, it's not a follow-up. I completely agree with both of you. I hate it. What I wanted to ask Sarah is, I recently, actually I'm seeing it more and more, where a tooltip is being implemented with JavaScript instead of using the title in HTML. They're using a tooltip. So when you focus on an element, it shows you a tooltip above it. Now, my concern is that the tooltips are being given on non-interactive element, meaning static elements are receiving focus just to give you a tooltip. And I think it's wrong because I think only active elements should get focus. And I just wanted to ask both of you what you think about it.
I 100% agree. And I wish I could, no, I don't want to say it. Argue is the wrong word, but I love having these discussions with designers, and this is just wrong. And I would be more than happy to like discuss these. If it's not interactive, it should not be receiving focus. And also, if it's the same problem that we just discussed with the hover drop downs, what happens with keyboard? What happens for a screen reader user? You need consistency for all of these users. There are so many issues with these components.
Yeah, I think in general, my general take on tooltips is to never use them if I can. That's kind of the general statement. If there is something important I want to highlight, I would just show it. And if it's something at lengthier, I would maybe use some sort of an accordion under input field or anything like that. And if it's an error message, let's say that I need to communicate, I would also display it either as if it's a table underneath the table, or in the error summary on the top or anything like that. That's just, the more obvious things are, the better they're going to work. So that's kind of
it's a client that has KPIs at the top on the header. And each time the user comes in, they have to listen to what the KPIs are all about, but they've already listened to that several times. Every time they go to the KPIs, they have to listen to it again and again. It's crazy.
Sounds like you need a skip link there.
Yes.
Yes.
Also,
probably.
I got a question. It's I received it as a direct message. So can I read it?
Sure.
Okay.
Of course.
So in modern designs, this is not a strict accessibility plus CSS question. In modern designs, we have sometimes two sections with the same background color or image, and the content of the section is given a max width, but the background colors or the image is covering the whole viewport. To overcome this, we have to wrap the content in a non-semantic element. Is this okay? I would have to see the design. By the way, I don't know if you're hearing any sounds in the background. That's not the sound of someone screaming. It's the sound of my neighbor's peacocks. It's mating season. They go crazy. It depends. When you say non-semantic element, you're probably referring to a div, right? So here's the thing. This is what I was actually working on the semantics chapter for the course. Div does have semantics, but it doesn't have meaningful semantics. A div is a generic container, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's okay to use a div if you use it appropriately. If you're only using it for styling purposes, if it's not meant to convey any meaningful meaning to the user, then absolutely, it's fine. But I would need to see the design and the code to decide to give an opinion of whether the code that you have is right or not. So maybe you may, for example, be wrapping the content section in an article or a section or whatever other semantic element is appropriate. And then you're wrapping that in a div for styling purposes. That would be absolutely fine. Yes. So it depends. It depends on how you're using it.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I do have one actually that I wanted to ask for a while as well, because I just spotted the tweet. I think it was Eric Eggert who posted it on accessibility, and he said essentially this interesting thing when we're looking into the state of CSS and everything shiny new coming our way. When we think about the cascade layers, and we think about the way of how we're organizing CSS at this point. And this is kind of the problem that I had just also maybe like a month ago or so. If you have, let's say, a site that has some massive accessibility issues, and also, unfortunately, a lot of legacy code, kind of changing frameworks is out of question. Like introducing any kind of massive changes, it's just out of question. One thing that could be extremely helpful, and I kind of love this idea, is to add with the cascade layers, you can add accessibility layer, right? On top of, let's say, something that lives underneath, which is just legacy. And then you kind of quick fixing, I guess, accessibility for it. Do you understand what I mean? Sorry, is it a thing? Are we going to do this in the future, or is it?
Okay. So someone, I don't know if it was Patrick Lauke or someone else who was active in the accessibility community, he responded saying that the next step would be accessibility overlays. Accessibility overlays are a bad idea because they try to fix underlying accessibility issues by putting that extra layer on top. So definitely the recommendation is to fix the code, not add an extra layer as a band-aid, because at some point, someone who's not knowledgeable about accessibility is going to go into that cascade layer, and they're going to change things in there and override things in there, or maybe create another layer on top of that layer to override that layer, and that can get easily messy. For me personally, I would use cascade layers for accessibility, but not to fix accessibility issues. I think I mentioned this in the very first smashing hour that we did. So a lot of us usually currently use ARIA attributes as hooks in our CSS to apply certain styles. I would place those accessibility specific hooks and styles in their own layer because, well, there are many reasons. And when I find the time to finish writing my articles, I will be talking about this in a separate article, but I would probably definitely not use it as a fix, because as that someone mentioned on Twitter, it's very similar to using accessibility overlays.
Yeah, so just for those of you who might not be familiar with cascade layers yet, they I think they have landed already in Chrome 101, if I'm not mistaken, or they will be. I'm just pasting a link for you to maybe just get a bit of information about how they work and everything like that. There was also a question that came from Teresa. She wanted to ask about inclusive HTML5 videos, and was wondering if we had, or you at this point had, any experience with interactive transcripts. Quote, I've been searching around online. I wanted to try out the interactive transcript option using video.js. Any insights on interactive transcripts would be much appreciated. Did you have any experience on that, Sarah?
I don't, but I was going to suggest the same thing that Marcus already suggested. There's I think it's been tested for accessibility, a video player called Able Player. It's supposed to be accessible and tested. That would be the first thing that I would look into if I had to build an accessible video player.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't have any personal experience with that.
Right. Another thing that also, that's the question that from James, actually. I think I found an article recently where it was reviewing, the author was reviewing, I think 17 services, which are essentially just adding accessibility overlays, right, to what we talked about in general. And I'm wondering at this point, do you see that there is a lot of people who find this just as as an easy fix to pass all those requirements by, again, band-aid, basically? Why do we see this massive spread? I remember vividly when it came for the first time, I don't know what the first service was. When it came for the first time, I was like, oh, that's not quite how it should be. And now we have 17, right? Which are all competing.
I feel like with the prevalence of lawsuits related to it, that probably helped push along people feeling like they need to do something. Like I was looking up reviews of UserWay, and a lot of write-ups were like, yeah, you'll take a performance hit, but it'll save you from lawsuits. So just do it, right? Is sort of what I saw. And I have a client who has, an educational institution, about 19 sites in, a bunch of different countries that they work in, and a few of them want to add userway. And I was trying to explain, I'm like, the site's already very accessible. And they're like, well, we want to be inclusive. And I'm like, it is inclusive. Like, I don't have, that I know of, a disability where I need special tools, but I would assume a lot of people who do generally have the tools they rely on, to help with that already. So I'm not sure we need like a control panel for switching color settings on the site. Like if someone has that condition, I feel like they would have whatever route they use to mitigate it, combined with an accessible website. And I was just curious what everyone thinks about that.
Yeah. So that's a very good point that you're bringing up, James. Yeah, please, Sarah.
So I have a couple of thoughts about this. As far as using an accessibility overlay in order to pass WCAG and avoid the lawsuits, I think Adrian Roselli has done a lot of talking and writing, and he even recently did a talk on in Hover, I think. Yeah, no, not Hover. AAA. It was the conference I emceed. Come on. So he had this entire talk about accessibility overlays. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were examples of where accessibility overlays did not fix accessibility issues. So I hope I'm not mistaken. So just adding an accessibility overlay may not guarantee that you're actually becoming accessible. And I'm almost sure that that's the case. So that was the first point. And the second point is, yes, sometimes the user can rely on their own tools to make a website accessible, but having assistive technologies does not guarantee that there are not going to be barriers anyway. So having sorry, English, I have to just rephrase these.
No worries.
Using assistive technology does not guarantee access. This is the simple statement here. We have to make sure that we remove the barriers that we may be creating on our websites for them, because someone may have for example, someone may be using Windows high contrast mode, say, and that is going to change the colors on the entire website. But if we're not building in a way that makes the website adapt in Windows high contrast mode the way it's supposed to adapt, then even Windows high contrast mode may end up not being enough. Some components may not be discernible. Some visual elements may be missing that they need in order to access the content on the site. So having assistive technologies does not guarantee access. And I'm almost sure that using overlays, accessibility overlays, does not guarantee that it's going to fix all the accessibility issues.
Right, so maybe just a quick...
If I may add,
sure.
Deque and I just came back from the CSUN conference in California. And usually in the CSUN, when you go to exhibitors, a lot of exhibitors show overlays, and and the overlays, hopefully this statement is correct, but the overlays are almost passé. They're not there because it was understood that the overlays not only didn't solve accessibility issues, they've created new ones. And people who are using assistive technology found barriers while using them, and they did everything they could in order to remove them. Not only that, and Adrian is talking about that, and Jonathan Mosen is talking about that. A lot of people are talking about that. What you do see today is those overlay companies are coming up with a different concept, and that's designing tools for developers and designers to make their content more accessible. That's what I saw. Anyway.
Yes, I saw that this also started with companies like Accessibility, which is the most known one, I guess, because they made a lot of noise. They're now thinking about refactoring their strategy. I talked to them. I saw other companies that started these overlays that are turning to designing developer tools, but they still market them wrongly as the tools that fix accessibility, because this is what people want to hear and purchase, and forget about people with disabilities, essentially. And I don't know, I also saw some overlays that not just introduce new accessibility issues, but we have one which is popular in Israel and also in some places outside of Israel, that even if you don't enable it, they block the website. They put an ARIA labeled by on every control of the website that says, you know, to make this accessible for screen readers, press blah, blah, blah. And this is a very bad violation. So I don't know, my opinion of these, both as a user and as someone who works in this field, is very bad against these companies, of course.
Right.
But,
so I'm wondering at this point, so if there is a company, let's say, that's coming our way and asks to, well, we want to make things more accessible. Also, we want to avoid any kind of legal disputes or anything like that. But we just rely on, I don't know, on a code base that is not accessible. We don't have the money now to bring in an expensive accessibility consultant to make it work. Is there ever a case to actually add this overlay as a band-aid, or is it just a really, really, really bad idea in general? Sarah, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I lost part of that conversation because I'm answering questions in the chat.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, so is there actually ever a case where you could say, okay, so we can't just go in and introduce any massive changes in accessibility right now because we don't have money, resources, timing, whatever. But for the time being, for the next year or so, while we're working on those accessibility improvements, we're going to add an overlay to avoid legal disputes. Is there a case that could justify that?
I don't know. And to be honest, I hope I never have to decide that because I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we're kind of going very deep into all the conversation. That's exactly how it should be. By the way, dear friends who are joining us now, I think that we have like 10 people also joined in just 5 minutes, in the last 5 minutes. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to bring up, this is the time for you to bring up your questions. We have ours, but yours are more important. So I think that Caitlin had a question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was wondering your opinions on like cards. And so say you have like a news item, like listing, and like linking the whole card, like the image, H tag, paragraph, excerpt, and link, or like, a lot of times like people like the people I work with for sure want like the image to be linked, and then also, the actual link, like for reading more. So then it's like, oh, is 2 links better, or is linking the whole thing better, in your opinion?
Sarah, go.
It depends. And I actually have 1, 2, 3 articles that are related to this. So one of them is on how to turn the entire thing into a link. So because you cannot wrap block level content inside of an A tag, so how would you work around that? But then that also needs to come with a compromise. This is what I actually did on the Smashing Magazine website when I built the front end of the redesign in 2016. So you could turn the entire thing into a link. I would do it if the design allows it, because then you also, the benefit of that is that you would have only 1 tab stop for each one of them, versus having multiple tab stops, which is not the best experience for keyboard users. It's not a bad user experience per se, but the less tab stops they have to go through, the better. So if they have to tab through 3 separate elements and all these elements take them to the same page, I would rather not do that if I can create just 1 link.
Yeah.
That is what I often do. Another question related. So like, I obviously wrap them with an article. Do you then put like, so I have an article tag and then I have the A tag. Is that kind of how you would, so that way I'm semantically still getting article in there? Well,
yeah, so there's an article tag, and the A tag would go inside of the H2 or H3, basically the title of the article. Right. Do you have, so.
Unless you're like linking the whole block. Like, so when you link the whole block, which is what I normally do.
Even if you link the whole block, because if you have an article and then an A tag, and where does the heading go? because if you put the heading inside of the A tag, and then you put, for example, maybe a paragraph or a teaser text inside of that, you're going to end up with the issue that I mentioned first, because you're going to have block level elements inside of an A tag. The workaround, I'm going to find my article and share the link in the chat. The workaround is to have a pseudo element on the one A tag that you have of the title, and then you cover the entire card using that pseudo element.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So it's a CSS
That's what you
trick
did also
to
for
avoid.
smashing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that makes sense. Thank you.
By the way, another option, if you have two links that go to the same location and you have one image, one whatever link, the workaround is to put a tab index -1 on one of them. So it won't go to both.
Yes, and I think that we just lost Sarah. Let me just check if we have Sarah here. Not really. So Sarah seems to have disappeared. So let's see if we can bring her back.
Sure, she will come back.
Yes, I think so.
She was also gone earlier for a little bit, so it might be something with the power.
Yeah, there are always some battery issues in there as well. I think we have.
Oh, there
Sarah
she
coming
is.
back. So, by the way, if you have any more questions, I'm actually following what you're writing in the chat. So I'm going to bring this up shortly. Obviously, you're the stars of the show. Is it a show? Oh, it is Smashing Hour. It's not even a show. It's more like an hour. All right. I think that we have had Sarah with us. Yeah, we have Sarah with us back.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. I don't remember where we stopped.
I just shared a link to the article. It's called Nested Links Without Nesting Links. That's where I explain how to create the card element where the entire thing is clickable.
Perfect. We do have more questions in the chat, but just before we do that, maybe one question that I had and I didn't know how to answer. Like, imagine if you have a form. In that form, you have a label, you have a hint, and you have an input field, right? Obviously, when you click on a label, when you focus on the label, you can move into the input field. The conversation that we had with designers was, should the hint text that lives right under the label, should it also be clickable and lead into the input field or not?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So if you have, let's say, a label, right? Label for an input field that you have. So you click on a label and you go into the input field, right? So if you also have a hint text under the label, should a click or a tap on that hint also drive to the input field or not?
No, because the interactive element is not even supposed to be inside of the label element, if that's what you have.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of the conversation that we're having. And the assumption was, well, if people click on a hint, right, or tap on a hint on mobile, then they surely would want to go into the input field. I was like, not necessarily, it's just text, right? So yeah, okay, so that's clear. All right, we have
associate the link, the hint with the label or with the input element with described by or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
all right.
There's a question in the chat.
You go. Yeah, excellent.
Okay, so does it make sense to have an accessible mode for your website that portrays a different experience compared to websites for regular users? Will that be too much of a maintainability mess? I would imagine that it would be, but it would not be up for me to decide. So according to Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, there is mention of accessible website or an equivalent accessible experience, but I mean, you are supposed to make the website accessible anyway. So you will end up with two separate versions. That's kind of like having two designs for the same thing and then trying to keep them in sync. So I would say, yeah, it could turn into a maintainability mess.
There was also a quite lengthier question from Sean Holmes, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you saw that one.
No, because my chat, I only have a few comments.
So let me bring this back up here. So it's a lengthy one, so maybe it would be better for you to read it out. So that's one. And there was another question that came up as well from Leo. Maybe that would be easier to answer first, which would be the tips on fighting politely on design to make it more accessible. You like this kind of questions, don't you?
Yeah. I do, because I like fighting for accessibility. The good thing is that WCAG exists. WCAG is just a guideline, you know, it's a baseline for accessibility. Meeting WCAG does not at all guarantee that your website is going to be usable. So I just want to mention that as a side note. But having WCAG is, I mean, it's a very good, I use it as leverage. Like if I'm working with a designer and they hate focus styles and the requirement for the website is to be accessible, I'm like, well, you're not going to be legally accessible according to WCAG unless you provide these focus indicators. That kind of usually ends the argument or the fight. You can basically, if you have to go use the legal card and use WCAG as a tool, as a leverage, then I would most likely do that. Other than that is, I try to educate the people, not the people, the designers that I work with as much as possible if they're not familiar with accessibility requirements. Again, I'm very lucky. I probably not have been in many of your shoes where you have had to work with more difficult designers, but usually try to inspire them instead of trying to make it seem like you're forcing your opinion or you're making them do something they don't want to do. I do this in every aspect of life, actually. If you inspire people to do something, make them like doing it, show them all the benefits, show them why it's good for them and for everybody else, that hopefully should work.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that I started doing, because I mean, I don't know what it tells you about me, but I like focus styles. I would say I love focus styles. I would go ahead and create groups on, internal organizations in Slack channel about like, let's share the best focus styles ever. Well, people usually don't even think about their focus styles. Like, why do we need focus styles? But then once you see that they can be very helpful and they can also look nice. And you can even make them, with border radius and all. I can have this outline offset as well. It's all nice. I mean, I don't know. Do you like? I mean, I have a big affection for focus styles.
Yeah,
it's just
me too.
even more than for link underlines, I would say. Yeah, I would say I like focus styles more. Yeah, please go, Sarah.
Okay, there's the discussion happening with Mark about having ARIA hidden true and tab index -1 on an interactive element. You should not do that. I have an article that I'm supposed to update, but again, I haven't been touching my website in a long time. Even if you hide it using ARIA hidden, even if you use tab index -1, I think it was NVDA and mouse mode. So an NVDA user on Windows might browse the website or explore the website using a mouse, but not the mouse that we use, the NVDA mouse. Sorry, I don't know the exact name for that. You may have ARIA hidden true and tab index -1 on a link, but it would still be announced as a link. So it would announce a link that they cannot use. And that would be a usability problem. So even though this is something that I have written about before, if you want to cover all usability cases, you probably want to avoid that. And usually, really, most of the time, the fix for any accessibility issue is a simple design change. If you can change the design or be a little less stubborn about how you want something to look or work, then the simpler you make the UI, the more usable it's going to be, probably most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple more questions coming in the chat. Would you like me to pick them up or would you like to pick them up?
You mean the new ones that are coming up now?
There are a few that I pasted in.
Okay. For a total noob on accessibility, where should I start? My course. Sorry, this is a shameless plug.
But I heard it's not there yet.
It's coming, and hopefully in the summer. I've been trying to avoid giving any end date because honestly, the main reason is because I keep changing so much. I'm rewriting a chapter now that was supposed to be finished, but I wasn't really happy with it. My gut feeling, I was like, it should be better. It can be better. And I'm rewriting now. It's so much better now. So I'm doing a lot of rewriting, and I keep expanding the course. Like I was supposed to turn a one-day workshop into a course, but I ended up expanding on so much. So now my main struggle is to just stop adding. I tweeted this out a few days ago that something that's been taking the most time working on the course is deciding what not to include. I was about to write an entire chapter and then I was like, no, wait, okay, this is way too much. If they want to learn about this topic, this is a tangent topic that I could provide links to, but I should not be turning that into a part of the course, hopefully in the summer. In the meantime, I should probably collect a list of links and resources, because I get this question a lot, like where to start. But if you can wait a little bit, I can recommend my course. I'm putting my heart into it, hopefully.
Oh, we can tell. I'm sure we can tell. So that's wonderful. So how would people find out about your course by any chance? Is there any magical link where they can subscribe to something maybe?
Yeah, I haven't sent out an email in a while, but I'm supposed to in a few weeks. Practical accessibility.
I know how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah, so HTTPS, so it's practical.
How could you forget HTTPS, Sarah?
Practical-accessibility.today. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I already have, I think it's 4,700 subscribers or something. I'm really excited. So basically there's a newsletter, there is going to be a really big announcement on my website. And if you follow me on Twitter, that's where I make the first announcements usually as well. So. Okay.
That sounds great. Maybe also one thing that I think we had discussed before, and it's actually related to the question that also came up, Flexbox grid, and also specifically, if you scroll a little bit up to what I pasted in, we had a client recently asking to have every element in multiple cards across multiple columns line up vertically. Vertically, which I find looks odd when one card has a large description. From a WCAG perspective, I think it passes, but don't know if I missed a potential cognitive issue. Have no problems with content misaligning, but curious to other people's views if that would have any potential accessibility issues. I should clarify it's a simple HTML, which is then aligned with CSS grid.
So I don't understand, what's the problem? The problem is that you are stretching the cards.
Yes, and sometimes you have very lengthy descriptions, so you have a lot of white space, I guess, in some other areas because everything is vertically aligned.
And the alternative to this would be to do some sort of like a Pinterest-like approach where you would fill. Okay, which one is better? I always imagine myself browsing something with a keyboard before doing so with a mouse. So if you use the what is it called? The Pinterest layout? It has a name.
Masonry kind of thing, but it's not quite masonry. It's kind of masonry.
Kind of. I don't know if you can do masonry.
Masonry or something. Yeah.
It should come. Yeah. What would be the keyboard navigation like? So if you tab 1, 2, 3, suppose that the third one is really long, and then I don't know. Personally, I don't know. It depends on the design. It depends on maybe one of the solutions could be to have shorter descriptions if that's possible. I don't know. Sometimes the solution to any problem is a change in the design, and a lot of times it's possible. Sometimes it's not. But I haven't had any issues with this design before. I've built it before, but it depends on how long the description is that's causing such.
Yeah. Another question that actually came up, I mean, I think I have just really many strange conversations in my life, but one discussion that came up, and I answered that it's probably not a good idea to use, but the question was, there are all these native elements in HTML now, right? For dialogue, for example. There are also many more coming up. There is this huge open UI initiative as well to standardize the select menus and all the things that we hate to design and build at this point. There is also this proposal for pop-up, for search, for tab list, for breadcrumbs even, and all of that. In general, so when you're speaking about, let's say, date picker and dialogue, and we could, of course, use native implementations. Should or should we never use them?
First of all, never say never.
Okay.
Second of all, if it's accessible, you could use it. You don't have to use it, but you could use it. And if it's native and accessible, then you're going to be getting a lot of accessibility built in for free. If it's native and accessible. So dialogue has had a lot of accessibility issues over the years. I think it's getting better now. My friend Scott O'Hara has an article that he frequently updates. I think the latest update was The latest release was with Safari, and I think Safari had some fixes for some of the accessibility issues, but I don't know if that fixes it completely, or that it's safe to use. What was the other element? So there was dialogue and date picker.
Input type date.
As far as I know, the last time I checked, it wasn't a really good experience at all. I don't know if that has changed, but it probably hasn't. Otherwise, I would have heard of it. And there's also something, always make sure to test, even if it's a native component. There are so many things to keep in mind there. First of all, for example, I think I saw someone, I don't know if it was Patrick Lauke or someone else, but basically they tweeted out about this new select menu element that is being worked on.
Pop-up, yeah.
And not pop-up, I think it's, yeah. So the select replacement that is currently being worked on, I think it has some accessibility problems. So even though it's giving us the power to select, to style the select dropdowns, it may have accessibility problems, in which case I would not use it. And I would go with something else while the problems are get fixed, for example. And another thing is, okay, I'm going to be taking things out of the course right now by saying this. You want to also keep in mind the usability of elements. So even if an element is accessible, 100% accessible, like the dialogue using, not dialogue, sorry, like summary and details, for example, that you can use to create an accordion, what is the usability of that component like? So what is an accordion? An accordion is usually a bunch of sections. Each one has a heading and then some text, and then they become interactive. So they are clickable headings. But if you use summary and details, you're not getting any headings, because summary is a button which eats up the semantics of everything that's inside of it. And if you don't have any headings, if you don't use headings, then you're taking away the user's ability to explore or discover those headings using a screen reader, for example, or navigating through them using a screen reader. It is accessible, but you're taking that small but efficient way to navigate that accordion using screen reader shortcuts, for example, or the rotor using VoiceOver. There's a lot of considerations to keep in mind. There is no, I would be totally giving a blanket answer and irresponsible, dare I say, answer if I say use this all the time or never use this. There is, I can't give you an answer. It depends on the component, if it's accessible or not, what the usability of that component is like, what are the accessibility mappings for that element, how is it exposed to screen readers, a lot of things you should be taking into consideration.
Right. So in that case, and this is actually, there's a comment from Bas on that. Just finish a complete menu with an accordion based on details summary.
Yeah, menu. Well, you said menu, not accordion. An accordion is a list of headings, interactive headings, but a menu is a completely different thing. Although I did see a tweet today by someone who also mentioned something about using summary and details. Someone did a research on this, or was it? Basically using summary and details in a menu, and why did they ended up not doing it? I don't want to be...
wasn't it in the GovUK article at some point on just that? It sounds very familiar to me. Maybe it wasn't that. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. But for drop downs, for menus, I usually just go for buttons with ARIA expanded. With ARIA expanded, there's a lot of over complex solutions for drop down menus. It doesn't have to be that complex.
Yeah, we also published just this list of accessible options. I mean, it's not by any means, it's not as comprehensive as Sarah's course, of course, will be, but we try our best to update it as well as time passes by. I mean, complete is a little bit pretentious, I guess, but it's there are plenty of accessible components that you can take a look there by good people who, you know, what they're writing and talking about, including Sarah, of course, in there as well. It might be Marcus, yes. Yeah, please, Sarah.
Just a couple of questions that...
Yeah, please go.
Okay, so with respect to the card height question, would it be okay to create the card component to only show a max number of lines to maintain design consistency and have a show all to show remaining text if the text length is exceeded? Or does this create an issue with accessibility or usability? As far as usability, that would require testing. As far as accessibility, it's not an accessibility issue. I've actually done this in one of the designs before. Having a show all button is fine, as long as you implement it in an accessible way. Another question is, do you have any recommendation for an enterprise level tool to test accessibility for websites? Looking for a tool that can scan the websites for A, AA, AAA standards and store reports to review later. I think Axe, the Deque's Axe suite has a lot of, well, it depends on how you want to use it. Are you looking for a browser extension or something to include in your continuous integration and delivery workflow? But Axe has a tool for everything, basically. I don't have a lot of other tools on my mind right now, but if I were to test a website for accessibility, I would probably start with a browser extension. I think this is a question that you had for me, Vitaly, and the list that you sent. Probably start with automated testing using a browser extension, then you have to do manual testing. And if you're conducting an audit, there's also a tool to generate a report. And I think the W3C has a tool, it's called WCAG WCAG Evaluation Method, if I'm not mistaken. And it comes with a tool that allows you to generate a report when you audit the website for accessibility.
Yep. Yeah,
I just
that makes sense.
so much information and it's just,
Yeah.
I just can't get it out.
Yeah, that's fine. That's incredible to kind of see this also. And also, I remember you mentioning once that there was this browser stack for screen readers, and I always lose the link.
Assistivlabs.
Okay, I have to double check as well. Assistivlabs.com, right? Or Assistivlabs something.
Assistivlabs.com, yeah.
Yeah, so do you have something on your wish list, Sarah, by the way, in terms of just something that would help you do your work much faster? Anything that's missing on the platform, be it HTML element, be it a tool that you're missing or anything like that? Are you happy so far with your workflow?
Yeah, I'm very satisfied with what we currently have. Even the things that I used to hate styling, like forms, I don't have any problems with them anymore. Although I would love to have cross-browser subgrid support because it comes in handy a lot.
Yeah, so far only Firefox, if I'm not mistaken, right? Maybe one more thing that I wanted to ask as well, that I just forgotten. I just had this in my head and now I've forgotten it. How does it happen in me? I don't know.
It happens to me all the time, I know.
Yeah. No, I don't think I'm going to get it. Probably not within the next 2 minutes. Although it was a perfect ending, but now I don't have it anymore. Okay, that's fine. Do you have any kind of recommendations or tools? No, I will not remember.
For what?
I mean, in general, if you think about the accessibility tooling, is there anything that you spotted recently that was like, wow, this is great to have, this is wonderful to have? One thing that I found quite cool was a color generator specifically for accessible color palettes, right? So there are plenty of color generators. They're like, I don't know, thousands of them, I guess. That was really useful for me because they also look very pretty, if I must say. Anything else that you spotted recently? Any tools, extensions, VS Code? Are you using VS Code? VS Code extensions, anything?
Yeah, I do use VS Code, but no, because most of my accessibility work is manual. I don't rely on tools too much, to be honest. Even when it comes to testing for accessibility, I maybe just run, I use the HTML validator, I use the browser extension like an Axe DevTools, and that's just it. Everything else I do try to do manual. Assistivlabs is a fantastic tool, but we've already mentioned that.
There are two tools that are, I think they're stronger. I'm actually three. One is Accessibility Insights for Web, which is Microsoft extension using Axe. Actually, everybody's using Axe. And then there is an IBM tool that also has a very extensive knowledge base that I like. And the third one is Arc Toolkit that I like as well. But Insights for Web is quite good. It doesn't...
If you could also paste the links in the chat as well.
Yeah, sure.
That would be absolutely fantastic. Right. Well, we are almost at the end of the hour. Well, this is how fast time can fly. And we didn't even bring up any of the questions that I listed. So Sarah, we'll have to have it another time yet again.
I almost don't want this to end, to be honest.
It doesn't have to. It's not like we are, anybody's going to kick us out. I mean, I hope at least here.
Well,
Well, except Karis, maybe.
No, you can stay.
You could stay. Yeah, I think so far I don't have any other questions from my end. Does anybody have any more questions? Maybe just a few more last ones, and then we'll start wrapping up.
Thank you everyone for joining us and for all the great questions.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining in at this point. I mean, it's always a pleasure to see you and hear you, Sarah. There are always some insights that one can get by talking to you. So with this in mind, dear friends, I think we'll be slowly wrapping up. Just as a little promotion, if I may, we also released a video course, but it's not about accessibility, I have to say. It's about interface design. So if you are interested in interface design, we just launched, well, not just, a couple of weeks ago now, finally launched the Smart Interface Design Patterns one, which is kind of fun. It's been fun for recording and also kind of an ongoing video library on that. You can also subscribe to the newsletter there, just saying, to get some updates, but about interface design and usability. Beyond that, we also have on Smashing Conf, we have online workshops also around accessibility and accessibility testing. And my sincere hope is that eventually, once Sarah is finished with the video course, we'll have an online workshop as well. Sarah, isn't that right?
Online workshop?
Well,
yes,
no, maybe.
It's difficult here specifically, like with my connection and the power.
But it's been working wonderfully. I mean,
well, I've been nervous the entire time, I have to admit.
Yeah, but I mean, we're all very nice people here, and we're very much, internet. Who cares about internet connection at this point? It's like, even if it's a broken pixels, it's great. I mean, even if it's audio issues, that's great too. No problem. I mean, we had a case once where I think it was Joey Leach, if I'm not mistaken. His bandwidth was just all gone because there was a big outage in the city where he was living. So he was gone for like 45 minutes. Everybody was just chilling. Just sitting there and drinking water and just fine, no problem, right? So we're all very friendly.
And then when you're doing 5 sessions, you just get less nervous every time, which is even better.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't
and
get
you can test
speaking.
all your material live.
Well, I will be using that material for workshops after the course, but not before.
Yes. At this point, I just want to emphasize that I'm really happy to accept any support from the people joining this call. I'm just saying.
Support for what?
For you setting up a workshop, online workshop. I think that it could be a very useful and popular thing as well. Just saying, but of course, we're not going to force you into it by any means. And I desperately want to see your video course as well, and really can't wait to dive in and learn as much as I could from it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with this in mind, dear friends, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you learned something from it. We'll be back. Karis, when we'll be back? Do we know? We have another smashing hour at some point, don't we?
Yeah, but I don't know when the next one will be. But we will let everyone know.
Yeah, so if you are subscribed to Smashing newsletter, you'll find out. We have, I think, a new one coming up in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Who knows at this point?
The event comes next week already. We have so many newsletters. If you just don't want to miss anything, subscribe to all of them.
That's too many newsletters. Well, that's okay. That's a separate conversation. But please follow along. And if you found a way here, you can follow us on Twitter. And also Smashing newsletter is a good way to start. And I'm really looking forward to meet and see you all there next time around. Thank you so much for joining. Sarah, thank you so much for joining as well.
Thank you for having me again.
Pleasure, as always. And everybody, see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining.